Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and today we're going to take a look at one of the original Transformer toys. From 1984, we have the Decepticon Warrior, Thundercracker. Thundercracker was released in 1984 as part of the original lineup. He would also be available in 1985. He would be discontinued in 1986 from retail shelves, and there'd be a few others in the Decepticon hierarchy that would take his place. Thundercracker would famously go on to be available as a mail-away, famously being portrayed here in one of these for the Stars playset, as Thundercracker would take center stage inside it. Now, an interesting thing is that while Thundercracker is shown here in the American version of this, the Japanese version of this mail-away offer instead used dirge. Also famously, Thundercracker would be severely damaged in the animated Transformers movie and would get reformatted by Unicron into Scourge, which is a bit of an ironic change when you consider their personalities. Thundercracker is basically described as one of the Transformers who's not totally buying into the Decepticon cause. He found himself to be superior to many of the land-based Transformers due to the fact that he could fly. But beyond that, he really didn't have much going for him, and just kind of went through life wondering exactly what was his purpose. Hearing a speech from Megatron caused him to join up with the Decepticons, as Megatron played on his feelings of superiority due to the fact that he could fly over most other Transformers. So that gave Thundercracker a cause to believe in, but he's not been too keen on everything exactly that the Decepticons have done and stood for. So it becomes kind of ironic because when he gets reformatted into Scourge, he becomes a fanatical Decepticon, willing to do anything for the cause, including mass murder and even die for the cause. When it comes to articulation, Thundercracker is just like Starscream that you've seen before, and every other one like him that's going to come eventually over the years. He's a brick. Thundercracker has limited motion in his arms due to how his wings are attached, but he can at least move a little bit at the shoulder, so he does get a little bit wider of a fire spread, but still, he doesn't have much to write home about. I do apologize for the way he might look here, folks. The notch that holds these cockpits down here into their chests does wear out over time, so it does make it pretty impossible to keep his head totally straight. About the only way to do that is to make him a cone head like Dirge, Ramjet, and Thrust were done, and it stays down pretty good. But since he's not a cone head, his head's going to sway there. Now, something that you should be aware of, in case you aren't already, is the fact that he's a blue jet just like his buddy Dirge is. But the thing you need to know easily is how to best tell the two apart. Well, as you can see here clearly, Thundercracker has silver-colored air intakes, whereas Dirge has black ones. So that's the easiest way to tell the two of them apart. There's a lot more different ways to do that, like namely Thundercracker is somewhat of a lighter shade of blue than what Dirge is. Dirge is more of a darker blue, but that could also be with all the black that he's got on him too. But the easy, and of course also the cockpit covers. Thundercracker's is orange, whereas Dirge is clear. I point this out because due to the fact that some dealers that you might find at toy shows or the flea market in particular, they aren't always careful about how they put them all together. So they'd see they got a blue plane and they got blue plane parts. They would probably assume that all of Thundercracker's pieces go with Dirge. And in reality, they don't. I mention this due to the fact that at one time I had been at one of the flea markets and they had given Thrust the wings for Ramjet because the color matched. Don't bother trying to tell these people that, folks. They're more, shut up, we know what we're doing, or get out of here before you scare off my customers. Okay, now we're going to move to transforming Thundercracker. And like Starscream beforehand, and all of his buddies to come, it basically involves removing a fair number of pieces off of him, then do the basic transformation. We'll start by, we'll remove his arm cannons here, and take the machine guns out of them. Set all that aside. Take off the tail fins here. Tail rudders, rather, excuse me. Get them out of the way. Remove his fists. And pop out the large wings. That's all you really need to get off of him. The tail fins here can stay because they don't get in the way of anything. Start by raising the nose up on his head. Then you're going to detach the head and fold it back like so and rotate it through his body. Then fold it up flush against the cockpit. Then we'll take his arms, fold them down to the sides, and then just fold them over into the back and snap them into place. Then you can lock the cockpit into place. Then you'll come down here to his feet and fold them in. And we're going to get his front landing gear here and attach it in under the nose. That way he'll kind of stand a little bit better. Then we get the tail rudder pieces and attach them to the tail fins. Be gentle with it. So they do wear out pretty easily. Then you'll notice these black circles here on his sides. Just fold them so they point out to the side. We're going to take the missile, his launchers here, mount a missile inside, grab a wing, mount them onto the hole underneath the wing, and then you attach the wing to the side. Do the same thing here with the other wing. And there you have it, folks. Thundercracker's alternate mode. An F-15 Eagle. Just like all the others like him. And as much as I know the Transformer fans are going to despise this, It's also the alternate mode of Leader 1. Of course, this is the giant Leader 1. He's only just a shade shorter than Thundercracker. And while the wings on Leader 1 here are drooping, Leader 1 is at least, that's him. That's it. There's no pieces that come off. To transform him, it's pretty simple. You don't take pieces off. Thundercracker, you half undress, then change him, and then redress him. So I can see why a lot of fans of late are a little bit frustrated with the Decepticon Seeker Jets. But overall, he's a pretty good representation of the F-15 Eagle. If not for the way his nose connects on there, he does swoosh pretty good. So he's still a fun toy regardless. Take a look here at all of these loose parts that Thundercracker comes with. Like Starscream and Skywarp, they more or less come with exactly the same pieces, but they're colored for each individual Transformer. So we'll start with the most prominent of his loose parts, his wings. You'll see they're in the same shade of blue as Thundercracker. And on the reverse side, they have a little hole inside to mount the launchers. And some nice sticker detail here on the front. We have two tail fins. Contrary to belief, Thundercrackers are black, whereas Starscream comes with the blue ones. And on the opposite side of each, they have sort of a modified dumbbell-shaped pin for how they connect into his legs. And nice sticker, but it's only on the one side. The reverse side has nothing. Same true for the other one. You have two tail rudders. They're pretty much the same. Same way either way. Not really any, there's no real difference between the two. The thing, these are probably some of the more easily lost of the pieces on these three jets, since they're constantly being pulled in and out of the tail fins. They do tend to work loose over time, and then they won't stay in properly. My Thundercracker here has a little bit of a hard time keeping these in when he's in the robot form. So, something to watch out for. I have two launchers. They're both exactly the same. Like all the other Transformer launchers, this time the launcher has been neutered, so it will not launch per se. It will hold the missiles or the machine guns inside, and that's about it. You gotta watch out on loose samples of these, since there are some out there that the previous owners have glued either the missiles or the machine guns in. As I stated in Starscream's review, please don't do that. We have two of these machine guns, the same shape as the ones that were in Starscream. And they are just very thin plastic. So here's the second one. These are often found broken, especially from the especially along the barrel, due to their small size. So do exercise some caution with how you store your Thundercracker. Possibly the most easily lost piece is his missiles, since they are relatively small. You can see there by how it stacks up against my index finger. These pieces are very small, and they're difficult to replace. Thundercracker does come with 2 of them. Thundercracker also has 2 fists. Now his fists are molded in black, which also goes the same for the ones for Dirge, Ramjet, and Thrust. So if you're looking for new fists, you can always scavenge them off of any of them, since the 4 of them do have the same color. And like with Starscream, there is a variation to the fists, and it involves this notch here that's along both sides. The notch is a later issued version. There is a solid black version that would not have the notches in here. Those were from an earlier release with the Transformers, so they'd be exclusive to Thundercracker and not to Dirge, Ramjet, or Thrust. But those, they don't attach to the arms as easily, so that's why there's the little notches in here to help hold it into place. And lastly, the one piece that all 6 of the jets share in common, the front landing gear. A little plastic stalk with 2 tiny metal wheels. All 6 of them come with this piece, so it's not too terribly hard to get. Especially if you can go through somebody's pile of scrap pieces, you might be able to find some of these real easily. And there you go. Quite a laundry list, friends. Moving right along now, we'll take a look at Thundercracker's instructions, and I happen to have the Canadian set of his instructions, as they're in English and French. As you can see, this was the style done in 1984. They were printed in full color, something that we would lose as the series went on, to help save money, of course. You open it up here and you get a beautiful spread of Thundercracker with all of his loose pieces. Right here at the start, they tell you all you need to attach, turn him into, make a complete plane. And then we start at step 1, where you take everything off of him and go from there. I don't see why they make you take off the tail fins, since they really don't get shifted at all, but you know how that goes. Only for them to come here on step 3 to put them back in. And now we come to what was likely the fun part, putting all the stickers on him. Sorry about that, folks. Darn Butterfingers here. And here on the last page, we have message to clip the robot points, even though it'd be another year before we'd start getting some offers. And then how to read the tech specs. Get those out of the way, and then speaking of the tech specs, we shall get Thundercracker's tech spec up here and have a look at him. It's got a nice picture of him that would have been the same picture on the front of the box. It's all done in purple to show he's a Decepticon, even lists him as such. It gives his name as Thundercracker, and his function is Warrior. His motto is, "The deadliest weapon is terror." Thundercracker is contemptuous of anything that cannot fly. Not totally convinced of the Decepticons' cause, but they've persuaded him to continue battling the Autobots. Flies at speeds up to 1,500 miles per hour. Produces controlled, deafening sonic booms. Can be heard for 200 miles. Equipped with powerful drone rockets and incendiary guns. Doubts about his cause sometimes impedes his effectiveness. Now, this is something that would have made Thundercracker more interesting if they had played it up any in most of the media, especially in the cartoon. Back then, they always wanted to tell us that the good guys were always the good guys and the bad guys were always the bad guys. There was no shades of gray like we all know nowadays. So it would have been more interesting had they allowed Thundercracker more opportunities to show off that he's not totally evil. Now we'll lay the decoder onto the grid and we'll go over his specs. It lists his strength as 7, his intelligence is 4, his speed is 9, his endurance is 7, his rank is 5, his courage is 8, his firepower is 7, and his skill is 7. So it makes him come off as being strong but stupid, and that, I believe, is an error due to the fact that on Skywarp's tech spec, it mentions here, would be useless without Megatron's supervision, yet they give him an intelligence stat of 9. So, like I mentioned earlier, I believe that Skywarp here has the specs for Starscream, and that Thundercrackers with that 4 intelligence should be for Skywarp. So more than likely, the stats here on Starscream's tech spec would be for Thundercracker, giving him strength of 7, intelligence of 7, speed of 9, endurance 7, rank 5, courage 8, firepower 7, and skill of 7. These seem a little more well-rounded and probably more appropriate for Thundercracker than the ones he was given on his own card. Now we get down to what do I think of him. Thundercracker's an interesting character, and has become more so now that they've developed his personality to talk more about how he joined up with the Decepticons, and how even though he belongs to them, he still feels out of place. In many ways, Thundercracker does reflect a lot of attitudes that are shared by people living in our world today, especially a lot of our younger people who find themselves detached and different from society and its norms. So that leads them to be easily manipulated and recruited into organizations, such as the various street gangs that plague our cities, or even, heaven forbid, the terror networks that constantly plague our nations. In many ways, Thundercracker is like a lot of these young recruits. He feels this need that he is better, but he has no real ambition or desire to find a better use for it, and gets easily swayed by somebody else to use his benefits for evil purposes instead of trying to find a benevolent way to use those gifts that he has. And as Thundercracker has more gotten aware of what the Decepticons do, he started to question it more. The only thing that holds him back is that he is very fearful of the retribution he could face from Starscream or even Megatron himself, should he dare to openly speak that he does not appreciate what they do. So it makes him a conflicted character, and that makes him more interesting than most of your general run-of-the-mill characters that the toy line often gave us. As a toy, I can understand why a lot of collectors are frustrated with Thundercracker here. The big amount of parts that he comes with is often the bane of many collectors, and they despise him, Starscream, Skywarp, and to some degree Thrust as well, because they have such a high amount of pieces to find, and finding a complete one is a pain. However, he was released in 1991 as an Action Master in Europe, and while he comes with an exosuit that goes around the figure to give him something of an appearance like this, he is painted in such a ghastly color combination that you will almost go blind looking at it. Overall, I'm going to put this toy somewhere in the middle tier. He's not good enough to be a top tier character, but he has become more interesting, especially as we've grown up and more away from the silliness that the 1980s cartoon gave us, to better understand these characters. And he's not a bad character per se, but it would be nice if they would develop more into his thoughts and feelings on being with the Decepticons. A solo story about his life with the Decepticons might be an interesting story to read and get a different point of view of what goes on inside the enemy organization. And that concludes my review of the Generation 1 Decepticon Warrior Thundercracker. If you like the video, please thumbs up it here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already. Like this video, post a comment, and share your thoughts with other fans. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.